Welcome to It's Family Business, the podcast. Join the Burgess family at our dinner table, where we explore the power of connection through stories, laughter, and lessons from life and business. Together, we'll reform the way we think about relationships, success, and growth. Grab a seat and join the conversation.
This podcast is brought to you by Pilates Reformers Australia, your all-in-one solution for Pilates and wellness. If you're looking to invest in commercial or home Pilates equipment, you need to speak to the experts in Pilates. Visit our website at pilatesreformersaustralia.com.au or check us out on social media.
Welcome back, everybody. We are so excited to have you with us today. Today, Adrian is back on the panel of our podcast.
Hello. Good to be back, Kirsten. Good to be back.
Thanks, Adrian. Thanks.
Back for the big numbers.
And Cheryl also is joining us again. So we've got the original gang back together.
Thanks, Kirsten.
So we received such excellent feedback from one of our previous episodes, setting up for success, opening a Pilates studio. We covered everything from location and design to financial planning for your new studio. And it was clear that a lot of our listeners were eager to take their studio business to the next level. So in this episode, we wanted to dive even deeper into how to implement effective strategies to advance your Pilates business. In this episode, we'll explore things like client acquisition, the importance of financial management, sustainable growth, how you can build an effective team, and of course, we will touch on important points about your Pilates equipment as well. So to start with, Adrian and Cheryl, I'll throw this one to you. What do you think is driving the explosive growth in Pilates, and how can studio owners capitalise on this momentum?
Well, Kirsten, I don't think there's a definitive answer as to what the explosion was what caused the explosion. It definitely happened, probably through COVID. We saw high demand for home Pilates. I think maybe a lot of people couldn't get gym equipment for home, so they bought Pilates equipment because there was definitely a high demand. And then I think after that started to wind up, we saw a lot of studios launching and this sort of snowball effect coming with Pilates. We thought maybe there was a confidence in the environment for, easier to maintain the hygiene for the equipment. It wasn't such a big scenario. It was a little bit more like a personal kind of training type level. What do you think, Cheryl?
Well, Pilates has been around for a long time, since 1930, and I think it has been rejuvenated and brought back to life by the explosion that's happened. I think it's a low-impact exercise. It has got very lots of rehabilitative abilities about it, and I think that's what is appealing to people at the moment.
Definitely. And I think to Adrian's point, the environment of a Pilates studio is a little bit more to certain people's taste in terms of what it is, the type of exercise that they like to do.
I think it's become a little bit more, as something becomes more common, everyone wants to get on board. And I think also from a owner business, Australians are definitely entrepreneurs. And I think the opportunity to start your own business and move into, Pilates is not that difficult. And you can quickly be, earning $100,000 a year quite easily after maybe a 6 or 12-month course. And away you go. You've got your own business, which is, a dream for a lot of people.
So how do Pilates studio owners leverage technology to improve their clients' experience? Because we're seeing a lot of the, screens and stuff like that are starting to come into the studio. So, how do you utilise technology, though, without losing the personal touch of Pilates and the importance of having an instructor there as well?
I think you need to be open to both. You cannot replace an instructor at all. The instructor is there to make sure you have the proper alignment, to make sure that you're doing the exercises correctly, to make sure that you're not going to injure yourself. And so they are pivotal in the business model. However, outside of those hours when you can have a instructor available, that is where the virtual side can come in for a lot of businesses, where they can then have like the screens, or people are allowed to do in-home virtual classes, or they can organise for an instructor to come to them virtually through their Zoom or whatever, so they can have it in home. So I do think it has to be a blend of both for it to be successful, and also for the experience of the actual customer, so that they are safe and so that they are getting the most out of Pilates.
And so in this booming industry of Pilates at the moment where there's so many studios, is technology the only way that you can differentiate yourself? Because, for example, just here, down the road, there's 3 Pilates studios in one building in our local area.
Yep.
So, how do I make sure that the community around me are going to come to my studio over the other 3 that are literally downstairs?
I think it's important that you know your stuff, first of all, and that you have exceptional staff that also know their stuff. If you're running, I don't like to bag out different training associations, but if you're running your instructor who's done a 2-day course, then maybe they're not going to be able to do the Pilates that people actually need to do. Just being on a reformer, moving backwards and forwards, doesn't mean you're doing Pilates as such. So that'd be first point of call. Create a nice environment, obviously have good equipment.
It's about building the community, like knowledge is power. So the more knowledge that your staff have, and that actually comes back to the studio owner, making sure that their staff continue to do professional development so that they can continue to bring more to the client base, because in today's society, everybody wants something new and exciting. And so how do you then make sure that your clients are continuing to improve with their body? Because if they're not seeing the improvements in their body, they're not going to keep coming back to you. So making sure that you're continually investing in your staff, whether that means you pay for professional development for them or the staff themselves go out and seek their own professional development to allow them to make sure that they're bringing back the latest information to their clients so that they continue to get better and stronger.
There's no doubt the reformer is still the key to Pilates. It is the main product that everybody wants, a reformer. I'm seeing a lot of studios move into the half trapeze or half Cadillac these days, and from what I've heard, it's been really successful. People have really liked that addition. So obviously, increasing the range of equipment, constantly increasing exercises, introducing jump board if they don't already have it is a good thing as well. But I mean, the sky's the limit, and Australia definitely leads the world when it comes to this. I've learned that from experience, that the rest of the world still is not where we are when it comes to Pilates.
So you spoke about how having an effective team of instructors around you is important. So, apart from giving them training, are there any other strategies that you think a business owner for a studio can implement to make sure that they've got a high-performing Pilates team around them?
I think you need to invest in events for your staff to build morale around them. So maybe every 3 months you might take them out for dinner or, go and do an activity together so that everybody is connected and they're all on the same page about what it is and the vibe that you want for your particular studio. The Christmas party is always a bonus, and that allows them to then interact with the clients. So you may only be teaching in that studio 2 or 3 times a week, and some people are only teaching once in that week, but you are ships passing in the night for instructors. So in order to make a collaborative community within that space, have events that they can all be part of.
What would be then, as a leader of the business, some strategies that you have events and stuff, but what is something that you personally can do for your instructors? Because, for example, I have a little statistic here.
Yes.
Companies with strong leadership are 13 times more likely to outperform their competitors. So obviously having a strong leader that's driving the business is key to success. So what do you think are some of the things that make up that good leader in comparison to somebody who's maybe not a good leader?
People need to see your face as the leader of your studio. It may be that I would cover for classes when someone was sick so that the community could see me teaching classes, or it could be that you are just standing at the reception and saying hello to people as they walk in the door. You're building that connection with the clients that are coming through the door. And then just with the instructors, just popping in to say hello, how are you going? Do you have any issues? Making yourself open and available to your instructors so that they can contact you whenever they need to without feeling like they're imposing on your time.
That is a tough question because, that goes through not just Pilates businesses, but every type of business. And then, there's lots of different ways that people try and lead their staff. I would just say from my own experience, be firm but not too firm.
You lead by example.
Lead by example. But yeah, I think I be friendly but not necessarily be their friend.
Yes.
That's probably pretty important because at the end of the day, friends take advantage of friends, and that's what will happen in business if you are too friendly.
There needs to be a level of respect between you as the leader and then you as with your employees. You build that through trust and you build that through loyalty and show them that this is what we're all, they've got to invest in what your vision that you have for your business.
And so how would I deal with the situation where I've got a difficult instructor or there's some conflict that's going on within your staff and that community there? I don't know, maybe an instructor's got low numbers in their classes and that's a difficult conversation that you've got to have.
You just encourage them to go and work for your competitor.
No, I think you have to. It's a conversation. Everything will boils down to a conversation. Is there something going on in their personal life that you are not aware of that could be affecting how they're working? Is there something that, they just don't have the knowledge base that you require them to be able to make the class effective or to, get that project done to the best of their ability? So do I then need to do something as the business owner to make them better in where they are? Because it's not necessarily that they've got something wrong. It may be something that they're lacking in things which I haven't been aware of that I need to be able to upskill them to.
Maybe they're just not a people person as well. Sometimes you find you might have a really talented instructor that the people just don't like, and it doesn't make sense because they've done all these courses and they've got a diploma in this and they've done, a university degree in this, but people still don't come to their class. And it's because they just don't like them. So I've always said personality first when it comes to picking instructors, and then you can look at their actual skills. Obviously the skills is super important, but it all means nothing if they've got no personality.
Higher on personality, very true. So, staff is obviously important when you're developing your business, but one of the most important factors is going to be finance and money. 62% of small businesses fail due to cash flow issues. So how do studios effectively analyse their finances to make informed business decisions?
Again, this is a general business question as opposed to necessarily just a Pilates studio.
Yep.
My mind is always, when you do have money, don't waste it. Doesn't matter how well you think you are doing. Make sure you're paying your bills and you're looking after your staff, and always consider reinvesting back into the business. When things boom, don't go and put a pool in necessarily or buy a new Mercedes-Benz. Maybe think about, again, investing in better quality equipment that makes you run more efficiently. Maybe look for a bigger space that allows you a bit of equipment in a different room to enhance the business. Because, at the end of the day, what goes up generally does go down. Doesn't matter how good you are.
And so beyond initial setup costs, are there any common unexpected expenses that a studio owner should maybe anticipate or try to plan for?
My mind goes to making sure that you have the right insurance policies for your business. I know in one of our studios there was a big downpour of rain. The water pipe on the outside of the building burst. It flooded through all of the floors, including our one, and we did not have the right contents insurance to cover our timber floor that was completely ruined by the flood. So that was an unexpected expense that we did not anticipate for. However, I do have a miscellaneous fund that I set aside for the business to cover any incidentals that may happen. So we were able to cover that cost and fix that up in that way. So
I wonder where that money came from.
It's my secret stash that you don't know about.
Another one.
Yeah, so there's just things like that, equipment breaks. So, you could be out of action for 6 weeks. Sometimes people can't get their reformers fixed for 6 weeks. So that's a downslide in your cash flow. So how are you going to
Just wanted to say that definitely doesn't happen with our equipment. But
No, but I have heard of studios where that has happened too. There could be cybersecurity is another issue that people can get hacked into. So how does that affect your business, and are you protected against that? And if you are, that does happen to you, do you have a little fund set aside to deal with that? The tax department can come along and maybe want to audit you. Do you have money aside to deal with that in case they're going to come along and take care of that? So
if something legal happens in your studio, do you have funds to protect yourself if you need to hire a lawyer for whatever reason that might happen?
That's right, yeah. So a lot of instructors only have professional indemnity and public liability because that's all that they're required to have. But as a studio owner, you might need to invest in a bit more than that to make sure that you are covered on top of whatever happens to the instructor. So There's lots of incidentals that happen, so just maybe having a fund set aside that allows you to cover for those miscellaneous expenses.
And can I just throw this in slightly off topic, but just from a studio I was at the other day? If you don't understand machinery that well, please don't service your equipment yourself, because you may find yourself completely liable due to the work that you've done on a reformer. Yeah, I just wanted to raise that because it was quite a nightmare trying to fix the damage that this instructor had done to her equipment.
Well, we are getting to the equipment, so we'll touch on that a little bit more in a minute. How does a studio owner balance then being competitive with their pricing but still making sure that they are covering their expenses? And, you know, another thing we've spoken about is making sure that you are allocating a wage for yourself and you've got money for you as well personally, not just to then invest back into your business. But how do you do all of that in a market where you're competing with studios and people are, you know, may not come to you because the other studio next door is cheaper?
Yes, look, that is always a difficult one. You have to be firm in your business plan and understand what the competitors are doing, definitely, but cheaper doesn't always mean better. Sometimes the cheaper ones are cheap for a reason, and if you're going to invest in quality, then you need to stand your ground and say the reason why we charge this price is because we believe we provide a better service. And that is the message that you need to get across in your marketing when you are, you know, getting those services out there. So what I found is that when we did cheapen our classes or have like an introductory offer that was very, very cheap, you attracted those people that are willing to pay that price, but they did not stay. The retention was lower. When we then pivoted and said, no, this is the benchmark that we're going to have and this is the quality that we're going to provide, we were able to retain our clients for a lot longer, and they still keep coming because that's how we marketed ourselves at that level. We had the equipment that went with that. We had the staff that were educated at that level, and, you know, we always had professional development days for the staff so that we could interact and make sure that we are all taking care of any issues that were happening with the staff. We invested in that.
I always sort of deviate a little bit from your questions because I lose concentration. But I was just thinking as you were talking, like a really positive thing for a Pilates studio to do to retain clients is to clean. Just clean everything.
A clean studio, yes, is a heavenly studio.
Honestly. It is just disgusting sometimes. No offence to all our clients that I've called to in the past. But, you know, there was once I came home and I had all these blonde hairs all over me, and Cheryl was like, so where have you been? But, you know, getting the vacuum cleaner under the reformers, pulling the shoulder pads, you know, cleaning those runners, because I personally, those hand grips sometimes, they're just caked in, you know, human sweat, and they're just so disgusting. I don't know why people would want to do Pilates in those studios. So, you know, wash your hand grips, clean your upholstery with, you know, Pra gym wipes. But yeah, and vacuum and just make sure all that hair's gone. And, you know, from a reformer perspective, always keep those runners clean, constantly clean.
But that goes for any business though. Like if your office space is clean and tidy and organised, it means that your business is clean, tidy and organised. So
our office space can definitely not be clean, tidy and organised.
Because when people get busy, it doesn't get organised. You know what I mean? You're busy and everything just piles one on top of the other. And when
you're used to seeing it dirty, you think that's normal because you can't remember what it looked like when it was clean.
That's right.
I know when I've laid beside reformers before and I think, oh, this is a clean studio. And then I roll over and I look under the reformer and there's all the hair. And it's like they've just swept it under the reformer. And it's like, oh my gosh, you guys have got to clean up.
Mm. And it is true. There's nothing worse than if you're like laying on the box and your head's, you know, down near the runners and you're looking at the floor underneath you and you're going, oh gosh, this is gross. Yeah, definitely. Well, you did touch on the Adrian client retention, which was a great segue into my next point.
Yes.
What are some successful referral programs that you have seen, and how do you recommend structuring that to maximise your impact and your profit and blah, 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 blah?
Relationships, so networking and collaboration with other people that allows you to be in front of a different audience will allow you to get a better referral program. I remember when we had our studio, if somebody did refer them to us, we gave them a free class. So, Kirsten, you've referred Adrian to me, and so, Kirsten, you get a free class because you're already a client of ours.
Oh, that's interesting.
Definitely with all types of businesses, your number one way to make sales is with the customers that are already customers.
Yes, your word of mouth is your best selling point.
100% word of mouth.
Yeah, that will be the most effective. You can't ignore everything else with your social media and blah, blah, blah. But yeah, you can, I always like the bring hubby for free one.
Yeah, refer a friend for free.
Bring a friend for free, yeah.
Yep, that's right. But it's not just about those initial introductory things. It's about what happens after you've got them in the door. So you need to have good systems and processes in place. So once they're in the door, how do you then work to make sure that they stay with you?
And can you give me some examples?
So it would be, is there a personal phone call to the person after they've come into the studio? How did you go? How did you find your instructor? Get some feedback about them. Can we overcome the obstacles that they may have? Maybe it's a price obstacle. Maybe it's a time obstacle. What obstacles are they having that they're not going to come back to you, and how can you overcome those obstacles? And that could be vetted out in a phone call, a personal touch sort of thing. It could be in follow-up email sequences that you may have. It may be, and then if you have different touch points that people can see you, so you're in the local newspaper or magazine, or you're in the local schools, or you're on the side of a bus or whatever, there's other ways that people go, oh, yes, that's right, I've been meaning to go to that studio, or yes, I've been meaning to try that or whatever.
Offering also corporate classes and
Corporate
stuff like
classes,
that.
yeah, to local businesses.
Local businesses, because, you might actually gain a new customer from that one corporate class that you offered.
That's right, yep.
I would probably also say that if you're doing the, bring a friend for free or bring hubby for free, make sure that class is not going to be too hard for hubby, because I think sometimes wifey likes to prove that, she can do more than he can, and he might end up being so sore that he just doesn't come.
That's always true though, isn't it?
Of course. But because I know, when I've gone to TRX, for example, and I've taken Cheryl's sister, she came and we worked out pretty hard and she never came back. So, yeah, I think that's something as well. Maybe it needs to be a bit more specific class so you're not busting them.
So another thing we just touched on then was marketing, another big area. What is one marketing strategy that either you've implemented or you've seen other, I suppose this can relate to all businesses, but studios implement that you think would really be effective in growing a Pilates studio's visibility?
Google. Google is a good one, but I think Cheryl spent too much on Google personally, especially for a small area. I think but you can still get yourself up on Google without paying for an AdWords campaign as such. Maybe a little bit in AdWords campaign. For me, that would be, I'm a bit older. I'm not into TikTok. But I think most people that go to Pilates are what's the percentage of people over 30 or over 40 or even over 50, 60, whatever. They generally would go to Google. So then I'd be saying, have a good presence on Google, especially if you're in, a busy area like Bondi or whatever where there's 5,000 studios. That's important. But I also feel that a website needs to be better. When I often look at some of our customers' websites and stuff, to me, it's like, it doesn't really tell me anything about the studio.
Yeah.
I want to know more. I want to see photos. I want to see, reviews, testimonials, the real ones, not the fake ones.
I always like Our Team page if I can see who your instructors are and what their experience is and things like that. It always annoys me when they don't have that, and I'm like, well, who is that person?
And get a male instructor.
They're hard to find.
They're hard to find. That's exactly
It's hard to find a instructor, let alone a male one.
I know. But it's good as far as men go, I think, to have a male instructor, especially if they know they need to do Pilates, but they're not necessarily comfortable about going and joining with a class full of women,
I think you also have to touch on the social media aspect. Not that they need to be showing fantastic exercises that's going on with your instructors, but just to give the vibe of the studio and of the clients doing exercises so that people can see what the vibe is of your space and the vibe that you're trying to portray to people.
Yeah, and if people are commenting on your posts, like your clients are commenting, then it makes it look like you've got this great community going because your clients are supporting you on social media.
Yeah, definitely. You also need to track. I'm a data person, so you need to track everything. Track your Google ad spend, track your Google SEO, track your social media spend if you're going to do meta ads, track your profit and loss, track your customers that are coming in, what was the retention rate, or how many were the new customers, how many have stayed, how many have left. track every single bit of data that you can possibly think about. A lot of the booking systems allow you to print out reports for that, print them out, look at them, and then you can then plan your marketing strategies around those data.
Spreadsheet time.
Indeed. So finally, our favourite topic to talk about, the equipment. How do you determine the lifespan of Pilates equipment?
How do you determine the lifespan of Pilates equipment? Well, I know that if they don't look after them, then the lifespan is going to be a lot shorter than when they do look after them. Mm-hmm. I know with Align Pilates, we go to the full ISO level, which is independently done. And, they put all these 150 kilos on the carriage, all springs attached, and they have this machine that moves the carriage backward and forwards for, I think it's about 130,000 repetitions. And then so we're able to literally do some really good numbers, Cheryl likes numbers, on what things start to show signs of wear, and the springs and obviously the pulleys, the ropes, the wheels particularly, all that stuff gets assessed, which gives us a really good idea of lifespan. Mm-hmm. But I honestly feel like a good quality reformer, you should get 10 years out of it without too many dramas, but super important to just keep them clean. I know I keep harping on cleanliness is godliness.
Yep.
That's super important.
So as a studio owner, and for a lot of people, they're not equipment experts like Adrian considers himself to be. So
thank you, Kirsten.
No, Adrian is.
Adrian is, yes. What, as a, someone who doesn't know anything about equipment too much, what are the certain things that they should be looking for when you're comparing a different brand? Like how do I look at a reformer and go, okay, yep, that's how I can tell that that's a quality and that that's not quality?
There's a lot of products in Australia that are not quality. Not going to beat around the bush there. It doesn't mean that they may not become quality in the future, but right now anything that's, seems too good to be true is probably not true. And, the big brands are big brands for a reason. They've done it for a long time. They know what they're doing.
But are there specific features that I can look at, aside from brand? Like how do I look at something? What about the carriage can I look for? What about the spring can I look for?
Yeah, look, and I probably get biased, of course, but I don't like a soft carriage. I know some people are like, but I like to feel comfortable. And we're like, yeah, but comfortable is not what you're here for. You're here to, work out. A softer carriage won't take too long before you can feel the board underneath the foam, because it wears much, much quicker than the hard sort of EVA foam. Mm-hmm. That'll be something. I like to look at stitching on the carriage. I don't like to see upholstery that's wrapped around, because that tends to buckle quite quickly. And obviously it's less quality as far as the finishing goes, so there's less time being put into it. I think from a user perspective, springs are not springs. Pilates spring is a Pilates spring, but at the end of the day, lots of people are not putting the effort into the springs. So that's super important.
How are you going to tell if it's a good spring or not?
Well, this comes down to the price. I mean, our springs are like $80 each. 5 springs, what's that, $400. You can buy a reformer for $400. We can't even buy our springs for $400. So that's probably something. But yeah, I mean, how can you tell? You can't really tell just by looking at them. You can feel a spring, but yeah.
What am I feeling when I feel a spring?
Well, this is something that, many Pilates instructors may have a different opinion, but in my opinion, we use music wire because music wire can stretch easier and further than a steel, so the flow is better. So that's why we like the music wire, because it's almost, you might say, more elastic than a steel spring. So that's why we've sort of worked with music wire. We've stuck with music wire for 15 years. Another thing is the foot bar. There's a lot of issues with foot bars. The strength factor when you go for ISO is foot bar. So to have ISO, the formula for a foot bar is you've got to divide it by 2.5. So you have to have a 150 kilo weight limit. You're looking at sort of over 400 kilos of capacity for that foot bar. So that's something that most foot bars wouldn't be able to handle. Mm-hmm. Of course, ours do, but that's a different type of story. And the other thing I often see with cheap reformers is the spring bar. A lot of them don't have a spring bar. They work with stoppers. And so Cheryl might be able to explain this more than I, but I kind of go, okay, so to move the carriage, I move the stopper, but I can't adjust the spring. So I have to preload a spring. So how's that actually effective? Because now I don't know what weight that spring really is without some sort of calculator and a chart that I can work off. So to me, a reformer that, a sliding foot bar, yes, that's a different scenario. Thank you, balanced body. But other than this sliding foot bar, you need to have a movable spring bar, I feel.
Well, isn't that how Joseph designed it when he first started? It was a movable spring bar.
Yes, it is. I know these days, with group reformer, it's, it becomes, if I've got, let's just say I've got 15 reformers, how am I going to possibly adjust that many spring bars at once? And that's why we've done the integrated spring bar, so it's super fast to move.
Yeah, but in a group reformer setting, this client is changing the spring bar, not the instructor.
Yeah, but if you've got to remove 2 stoppers, which they generally have one stopper either side, then you've got to move the springs and then put the stoppers back in. It's still time consuming even for one. And let's say the instructor does want to do it, well, she could be on each machine for up to 90 seconds.
Well, okay, for argument's sake though, am I really moving the spring bar in a group session?
Well, this is when it comes down to, we go back to the quality of the instruction that the clients are getting.
Right.
If they get on and they're doing their footwork and their knees are sitting on their chest, are they doing the footwork properly, Cheryl? No, they're not. So...
But no, my point is, okay, as soon as I walk into the session and I'm laying down, usually it's like, okay, yeah, you're a bit squashed there, let me just move you. Mm-hmm. And then you would pretty much stay on that setting for the entire session. Am I wrong?
That's correct. Look, ideally, that client already knows their setting before they even come into the class. So if they are a beginner and the studio is doing a good job, they have already, briefed the client on the reformer, how the reformer is supposed to be set up for their body type, so that when they come in, they know what changes to make so that the class flows properly. And that comes back to when we were talking about the experience of the customer, making sure that that customer is well looked after from the outset, the moment they walk in the door.
And what about from your perspective, Cheryl? Because obviously Adrian's looking at it from a mechanical perspective. What you as an instructor who's probably taught on a variety of equipment, what do you look for to say, yeah, that's a good quality reformer versus, oh gosh, I don't like that one?
When you get on it and you feel it, as soon as you get on it and you can feel the springs and how the springs are reacting to the body and the exercise that you're doing. I've got on reformers where the spring bar is just rocking backwards and forwards. The foot bar, not the spring bar. I've been on reformers where the upholstery is buckling underneath your feet. It's just the experience that you have when you actually lay down or when you kneel on it or when you stand on it. You can feel it. It's just an automatic thing.
Yep.
And again, lots of instructors, different training methods will have different opinions there.
Of course.
Like, me personally, when I get on a classical reformer, I go, oh my God, why do people use this thing? It's so rough and so horrible. But they love rough and horrible. So
it's not rough and horrible, Adrian. I'll have to correct you there. It is, again, the experience of the information that is given to you by the instructor allows you to appreciate the equipment that you're on. Mm-hmm. So how you're taught to use it and how you go about using it affects the way that you look at equipment and whatever. So if you train on cheap stuff, you're going to look at cheap stuff and go, hey, this is really good. But if you train on better stuff, then you will go, hey, this is the level that I'm used to.
And also, going back to cleaning.
Yes.
If you don't clean, your reformer will become rough and horrible. A nice new classic reformer actually doesn't feel so rough and horrible, but the problem is that they're still just not clean, so they get rougher and noisier from the build-up from the wheels. So.
That's right. So if you are correct. If you do clean it, it will stay in the same condition that you had it when you first bought it.
Which takes me to my next question. How often should you service your Pilates equipment based on your usage, I suppose?
Weekly.
And what? Well, no. Clean.
Well, you mean you service yourself or clean yourself?
Clean it yourself weekly, yes.
Clean yourself. I thought you were more like talking about when to get Pilates reformers Australia to come in. I'm like, I'm not going every week.
No, there should be a service that the studio does, like a cleaning service that they do each week on their equipment. And then I think...
So then what would be what are the signs then that, I need to get the professionals in to come and actually look at this reformer for me?
I know some brands recommend 3 monthly services. I think that's your choice if you want to spend that sort of money on a 3 monthly service. It's absolutely not necessary. I mean, with our stuff, depending on the usage, like if you've got a studio running 45 hours a week and they're not looking after them, then you might be looking at 6 to 12 month service based on that. But normally I think 12 months to 2 years, depending on how well they keep them clean. If they really do look after themselves as far as cleanliness goes, you may find you just need to watch bolts because they are moving parts, so they can come loose. Even though they're Loctite, they still can come loose. So make sure things are tight. There's no written rule on how often you really need to service.
If your springs are bent or not functioning properly, then definitely they need to be changed. So if you can't do it yourself, then get the manufacturer to come and fix it up for you.
Springs talk to you. I always say this, but it sounds a bit like I'm a reformer idiot. But I like to say that springs talk to you. If a spring all of a sudden starts twanging a little bit differently, that's a warning sign. And you need to have a look at it, make sure it's not caught on one of the straps or something underneath, or, like a spring sock. Maybe it's caught in the spring sock. If it's none of those things, I would definitely suggest replacing that spring. If it's within the 2-year warranty period, then ring the manufacturer and say, listen, this spring's doing this. I know if it happens to us, we would say, yep, let's replace that for you. But springs is probably one of the more sort of important things to keep an eye on. You'll see a gap form between the ringlets. That's a big problem. People don't realise that bashing the carriage into the stop position is a problem for springs. They don't like that. So yeah, lots of banging in a studio, which we often see and hear, is bad for springs. So yeah, you need to just keep an eye on the springs for sure.
Just replace things that are broken or dirty. If the straps are fraying, get them replaced. If the hand straps are a bit torn, get them replaced. It comes back to that, if I have a clean, tidy, professional space, then, the people will trust you and continue to come back to you. So, if there's a tear in the upholstery, get it reupholstered. Don't just keep going with duct tape.
Yeah.
Don't use essential oils on your upholstery, please, folks. No tea tree oil, all that stuff is a no-no for upholstery.
Any last little grievances that you just want to get out?
Listen, we designed the Pra Gym wipes to give you longevity. That's what they're there for, folks. Honestly, we don't do them to make money.
Okay.
Sorry. It's true though.
Well, that brings us to the end of this discussion about, our further strategies to help you develop your studio and keep it successful in a highly competitive market. Are there any final thoughts that you'd like to share before we wrap up?
I'm sure I wanted to mention that, studios should consider things like ladders, maybe the fuse ladder. Fuse ladder is quite good as far as bringing something new in. It takes up next to no footprint because it mounts on the wall. I know mounting on the wall is problematic, but it can be relatively easy depending what the wall's made of. But that's something I think is a good thing.
Yep.
Just to enhance your studio. Also entice men a little bit as well because you can obviously hang the TRX on it and you can do a little bit of that sort of stuff. Obviously there's a course on the fuse ladder, so that's something I wanted to kind of mention. Mm-hmm. It's a good product. It doesn't have to be a fuse ladder at the end of the day. It can just be a normal ladder, but of course
so just providing different equipment to provide diversity in
things
business.
That have low footprint like a fuse ladder is a good option. Obviously a half Cadillac is becoming more and more popular now as well. Yep. So yeah, when choosing a reformer, think about can it actually have a half Cadillac in the future when I want to adapt and grow. When we first invented the C8 reformer, we had that in mind, like you can have a full Cadillac on it or a half Cadillac. You can have low leg, extension leg, so it can grow with your needs as your studio grows, which I think, credit to Align Pilates, that was a good idea and good vision there. And that has actually happened. I've put a full Cadillac on a C8 reformer that's been sort of 7-8 years old, and we've gone back, put a full Cadillac on it, and they've sort of changed the direction of their business.
Yeah.
So a really good idea.
Yeah, because obviously as you grow it in your skill level and your level of training, what you can offer will change.
Correct.
So definitely your equipment needs to be able to change with that. Your studio needs to be able to maybe have the space to accommodate more pieces of equipment as you grow as well.
There's no doubt that clients get bored. I've done new studios that I said, you want jump boards? And they go, no, we don't want the jump boards yet. We want to introduce those later when our clients start getting better and used to the reformer, then we'll introduce the jump board.
Yeah.
I personally love the jump board, but yeah, so things like that you can slowly bring in.
Mm-hmm. And Cheryl, anything to add?
I think we've covered everything, Kirsten.
I think we have. I think we've covered
I
a lot.
don't think we've left a stone unturned.
I'm sure we have.
We have.
Did I mention cleaning the reformers?
We actually have quite a lot of resources available on our website,
We do.
pilatesreformersaustralia.com.au. We have pages of books and blogs and so many things that you can look at to help develop your studio, just based off running studios ourselves, as well as seeing and hearing about a lot of other studios and their experiences. We've developed those resources and they're free. So feel free to have a
We have
look at
the
all of
maintenance
those.
booklet done yet?
We have done a maintenance booklet, which is like a service logbook that you can look at. It covers things to look at for your reformer
Yeah.
inspections. Keep a record of it. It's got the space for that for you. So
We should,
definitely check it all out.
Interrupt you again. I should just also raise that I've always said it's really important to show documentation that you're maintaining your reformers. I did have that recently where a lady had a problem in her studio, and when she had to involve her insurance company and did engage with her solicitor as well, because her client was not, let's say she wasn't very happy. But when she actually had documentation that Pilates Reformers Australia had been there every 12 months and serviced her reformers, her solicitor said, you've got nothing to worry about. So really good to keep documentation on the servicing of the reformers. Even if you do it yourself, that's not a problem. You just need to record it and document it. So we have those manuals and those guides available now.
We do, definitely. Well, thank you very much, everybody, for joining us once again on It's Family Business. We hope to see you next time.
Thanks very much.
Thanks, guys. Bye.